The day the company's secrets came crashing down, the headlines screamed fraud. And there I was, Ryan, the so-called scapegoat, standing in the middle of it all. Emily, my wife, the CEO's wife in the public eye, but mine in secret, wasted no time. She stood before the cameras, flawless in the flashing lights, shielding Edward with every word. To the world, she painted me as the villain. To prove her loyalty to him, she promised the harshest punishment for me. And Edward, he played his role perfectly. With that practiced look of heartbreak, he said, "Ryan, I warned you. I told you not to misuse company funds, not to falsify records. Why didn't you listen?" The office fell silent. My colleagues' eyes burned into me, waiting for my defense, waiting for me to beg for forgiveness. But instead, I smiled. I admitted to everything. I even offered my resignation. Emily thought that meant I'd finally woken up, that I'd chosen to be sensible. She leaned close, her voice low and promising. "Don't worry, once this storm passes, I'll find a way to bring you back. And when the time is right, I'll even make our relationship public, as compensation." But what she didn't know was this. From the very first day of operations, under the chairman's orders, I had quietly installed monitoring software on every single company computer. Every keystroke, every email, every transaction, stored waiting. The truth was there. All it would take was pulling that data, and their lies would unravel. And when that day came, it wouldn't be me facing ruin, it would be them. Financial penalties, criminal charges, even prison time. Edward cornered me almost immediately. His voice was sharp, arrogant, dripping with contempt. "Ryan, do you think resigning will erase what you've done? Dream on. The fraud you committed cost this company $8 million in losses." Back at my desk, he shoved aside the box of things I had just packed. Papers scattered across the floor. My colleagues looked on, whispering but staying silent, too afraid, or too eager to watch me fall. I raised my head and asked flatly, "What more do you want?" Edward tilted his chin, savoring his power. "Simple. You're going to cover the financial hole. You're going to make up for the losses. And every project you've been working on, hand them over. You'll even help us finish them. The projects, the very lifeblood of the company. Deals I had spent months, sometimes years, cultivating." Edward wasn't just accusing me of fraud. He was trying to bleed me dry, to strip me of everything I had left. I looked at Emily. For a brief moment, I hoped she might stand by me, but after a pause, she nodded. "Edward's right. The company has already suffered enough. If you're willing to take responsibility and finish the projects, maybe I'll let you stay." Edward's smug grin widened. My chest tightened as the memory of 6 months ago clawed its way back. Edward's arrival, Emily's sudden, strange interest in him. She had never once involved herself in hiring decisions, yet somehow she personally interviewed him, bypassed stronger candidates, and chose him as her assistant. When I asked her why, she smiled softly and said, "He reminds me of you, back when you were younger. I just want to give him a chance. Don't overthink it." And I believed her. Even after 7 years of a secret marriage, even after all the small sacrifices I'd watched her make for him, I told myself it was just kindness, just guilt over our struggles back then. But standing here now, watching her defend him, I could no longer lie to myself. I let out a sharp laugh. Edward is just an assistant. What right does he have to take over my projects? And you expect me to help him? Emily blinked, stunned. She wasn't used to me pushing back. For years, I had swallowed my pride, stayed silent, endured. But not this time. Edward's eyes flickered with irritation, though he quickly masked it with a saintly smile. "Ryan, I only offered you this chance because you've been here so long. Even if you don't appreciate it, you shouldn't insult me, right?" Then, as if on cue, he played the victim, turning to Emily with a pained expression. "If I'm really that useless, maybe I should just leave." Panic flashed across her face. She reached for him instantly. "Who said you're useless? As long as I'm here, no one will make you leave." Her voice cracked like a whip as she turned on me. "Ryan, I'm so disappointed. Just because you've been here longer doesn't mean you get to bully newcomers. Edward works hard. He takes his job seriously. He may be just an assistant now, but in time, he'll be a rising star. I almost laughed again. Rising star? Since joining, Edward had stumbled through project after project, nearly destroying relationships I had spent years building. More than once, I'd had to personally beg suppliers for forgiveness just to keep the company afloat. If not for me, headquarters would have cut us off months ago. But Emily couldn't see that. Or maybe she didn't want to. When I didn't respond, she softened her tone, as if she were being reasonable. Ryan, Edward was only offering a suggestion. This way, you can quiet the rumors, keep your position, and show the employees you care. What's wrong with that? Her words emboldened the others. For years, they had lived off the fruits of my labor. Bonuses, promotions, respect. But now, with me cornered, they smelled blood. One spoke up. Ryan, you hoard all the key projects while we get scraps. This is your chance to share. Another added, and let's be honest, your reputation is ruined. If you leave, no company will take you. Voices piled on. Exactly. Just apologize to Edward and move on. These were people I had mentored, people whose careers I had built. Now, they twisted my success into selfishness, my silence into guilt. Edward basked in their support. He gave me that gracious, mocking smile and said, Ryan, if you apologize, maybe I'll forgive you. Emily's face lit up beside him. Edward is so kind, so generous. Ryan, even without you, I believe Edward can handle those projects. He'll keep everything moving forward. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't just betrayal. This was erasure. They weren't just taking my place in the company. They were rewriting the story, stripping away every ounce of value I had ever given. She looked at me with that familiar mix of impatience and condescension, leaning in just enough to whisper, Stop being stubborn. Take this opportunity. When it's all over, I'll make it up to you. We'll finally go public with our relationship. I couldn't stop the laugh that slipped out, not because it was funny, but because I'd heard it too many times before. The same empty promise, dressed up as a reward. And now I was done waiting. The cruelest part was that the real criminal wasn't me. It was Edward. He had stolen company funds, manipulated the accounts, and when the truth came too close, Emily had stepped in to shield him. And me, I was the one she tossed into the fire. Now, standing there like actors on a stage, they played the parts of righteous saviors, expecting me to thank them for it. Did they really think I was that naive? I raised my hands in mock surrender, my voice laced with irony. Since Edward is so capable, then by all means, let him take it all. I'll be waiting to celebrate your great success. The shift in Emily's face was instant. Her patience evaporated, her eyes turning sharp. Ryan, you really are pushing it. If you're so eager to leave, then go. Just don't come crawling back when no one will hire you. I smiled calm and steady. Don't worry, that day will never come. Because the truth was, it wouldn't be me crying regret. It would be them. From the very beginning, the board had ordered me to install monitoring software on every company computer. Every deal, every fraudulent number, every stolen cent was sitting there, waiting. And once the chairman saw the data, their story would collapse. Not just fines, not just disgrace. No, this time it would end in prison. That night, I quietly packed my belongings. At the same time, I asked my lawyer to prepare the divorce papers. When everything was ready, I walked out of that house and checked into a hotel. For the first time in years, I lay in bed alone, scrolling through my phone, trying to plan my next move. But then, buzz, a new message from Edward. I opened it to see him sprawled out on a sofa, grinning smugly. The coffee table was stacked high with snacks and fruit. In the background, Emily moved around the kitchen, cooking under the warm glow of the lights. Dish after dish appeared on the table, steam curling up like smoke in a dream. And then came his voice message. Ryan, so what if you married Emily? In her heart, I'm the one that matters. I just said I was hungry, and she rushed to make me a midnight snack. She even stocked the table with my favorite things. You've been with her for years, but tell me, has she ever done this for you? The words hit harder than I expected, because they were true. In 10 years with Emily, she'd never cooked for me. Not once. She claimed the smell of oil made her sick, sent her retching until she nearly fainted. And I believed her. I protected her from it, kept her away from the kitchen, opened every window, blasted the exhaust fan whenever I cooked. I thought I was sparing her pain, but now I saw it clearly. It wasn't that she couldn't cook. It was that she never cared enough to cook for me. The sting burned for only a moment before it turned to steel. I saved every message, every clip, screen recorded the evidence, and filed it away. Then I opened a recruitment app. Before I could even update my profile, a message came in from Panda Group, the giant, the kind of company that made even our parent company tremble. They wanted to meet me. Tomorrow, the next day, I arrive at the tea house. What I thought would be an introduction turned out to be something else entirely. They already had the contract ready. When I mentioned I was staying at a hotel, they offered me a residence, completely free. Every clause in the contract seemed written just for me. I couldn't hide my confusion, and they noticed. Smiling, one of them explained, "Mr. Ryan, our group has long admired your work. The moment we heard you resigned, we pushed to fast-track your hire. Don't worry, the rumors won't touch your position here." For the first time in days, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long while. Relief. Their sincerity was undeniable, and I knew I couldn't refuse. I signed, confirmed the start date, and politely turned down their invitation to dinner. As I stepped out of the private room, I was already planning my next move. But fate wasn't done playing its little games. Right there in the corridor, I ran straight into Emily and Edward. They froze. Emily blinked at me, confusion all over her face. "What are you doing here?" she asked. In 10 years, she had never once seen me step into a tea house. Edward's mind worked faster. His lips curled into a sneer. "So, Ryan, you've been following us, haven't you? Heard we were meeting a client today?" I couldn't help but laugh under my breath. The truth was, it was just coincidence. But I did have something to say to Emily. I walked straight toward her, meeting her eyes. "We need to talk." At once, her expression softened, like ice melting under the sun. For a second, her eyes lit up with relief, almost satisfaction. She masked it with calmness, but her tone betrayed her pride. "So, you finally come to your senses after a night alone. Ready to admit you were wrong? Fine, apologize to Edward first." But I didn't let her finish. "Emily, let's get a divorce." The words sliced through the air. Emily's head snapped up, disbelief written across her face. Edward's eyes lit up with joy, but he quickly smothered it with a mask of surprise. Emily's voice trembled. "Ryan, what are you saying? Is this because of the press conference? You're angry, that's all." It was for the company's reputation. I cut her off coldly. "You and I both know who that press conference was really for." Edward jumped in, feigning injury. "I knew it. You've always looked down on me, just because I'm an assistant. I've always been a burden to you." The sharp sting of Mr. Lee's words drained the color from Emily's face. For a brief moment, her mask slipped, but with the chairman standing right there, she forced a smile back into place. "Chairman," she said, her voice trembling with restraint, "Edward has been by my side for more than half a year. I know his ability, I know his character. Mr. Lee must have heard some ridiculous rumors and misunderstood him." But even as she spoke, her eyes flicked toward me, quick, accusing, desperate. Everyone in the room could see it. Emily had convinced herself that the only person capable of destroying Edward's reputation was me. Mr. Lee didn't even give her the courtesy of a glance. His gaze shifted to the chairman instead, calm but cutting. "Since Ryan is no longer with your company," he said flatly, "our cooperation ends here." The words dropped like a bomb. Before the chairman could respond, Emily's mask shattered. Panic spilled across her face as she rushed to explain. "Mr. Lee, what do you mean? Even if Ryan is gone, Edward is still here. He can..." But what she didn't know was that Edward had already burned every bridge he had with Mr. Lee's family. He'd offended Mr. Lee's younger brother, a supplier, and word of his arrogance had been circulating for months. "Sure enough, Mr. Lee's lips curled into a mocking sneer. Edward, he scoffed. What is he even worth? He doesn't deserve to sit across from me at the same table. His eyes slid back to Emily, sharp and merciless. And you, Emily, it's not just that you're out of touch. You're arrogant. Tell me, do you even take us seriously? The word landed like a verdict, and Emily's face turned pale as ash. Edward's expression twisted with fury. Corner, humiliated, he turned the blame elsewhere. Mr. Lee, he barked, his voice cracking under pressure. You and Ryan must be colluding together. What other explanation is there? The chairman's gaze turned to Edward, and the younger man mistook it for an opening. Confidence flooded his voice. Chairman, think about it. Ryan's been bitter ever since he was fired yesterday. He must have fabricated that surveillance footage and bribed Mr. Lee. That's why he staged his whole act today, to destroy Emily and me in front of you. He jabbed a finger at me, eyes wild. Otherwise, how could he just happen to show up with evidence at the exact same time? In spite of myself, I almost admired his audacity. The man could spin lies like a seasoned playwright. Unfortunately for him, this wasn't theater. But to my surprise, Emily actually believed him. Her eyes narrowed, full of suspicion. She glanced between me and Mr. Lee, her voice sharp as glass. Ryan, she hissed, I thought you were just jealous, just throwing another tantrum. I didn't expect you'd stoop this low, using such vile tricks. The room went still. Shock rippled through the crowd. Faces turned toward Emily, disbelief written in every gaze. Even the chairman's expression soured. His brows drew together, and finally he spoke. Enough. His voice cut through the room like a blade. The president of a company, acting like a market shrew. What kind of behavior is this? Emily froze, her face turning crimson. She stammered for words, but the chairman raised a hand, his composure steady. When the branch first opened, I instructed Ryan to install monitoring software on every computer. Are you suggesting that I fabricated this video? The room fell silent. Emily and Edward's mouths opened, but no words came out. No one had expected the truth to be this simple. The chairman's voice hardened. As for why Ryan is here today, it's because I asked him to come. I wanted him to confront you both, face to face. Emily, you've truly disappointed me. Cold sweat slid down Emily's forehead. Her eyes darted between me and the chairman. Confusion written across her face. How could I, an orphan with no family, no backing, have such a relationship with the chairman? Why would he trust me with something so important? Edward, humiliated and trembling, snapped. You two set me up together. Mr. Lee scoffed, his contempt dripping from every word. If you hadn't done anything shady, how could anyone set you up? Instead of blaming others, maybe you should be preparing yourself to face the law. Edward's face twisted, rage bubbling up again. But before he could spit another curse, he noticed the secretary quietly pulling out his phone. And then, far off at first, then growing louder, the sound of sirens filled the air. Edward's bravado crumbled. His face went pale, his voice stuttering. You wait for me. But before he could finish, he bolted. Panic drove him out of the building and into the streets. The chairman only raised an eyebrow, saying nothing. The secretary immediately gestured for staff to follow. Emily remained frozen where she stood. Her lips trembled, her hands clutching the hem of her skirt. She hadn't just been betrayed, she'd been abandoned. Even knowing that the truth would drag them both down, Edward had chosen to save himself. Mr. Lee, watching her crumble, delivered the final blow. Emily, he said coldly, do you still believe that assistant of yours is talent? Her face was ghostly pale. Her lips formed words, but they were little more than whispers. No, that's impossible. Edward isn't like that. The chairman's sigh carried weight. He turned to me, regret shadowing his eyes. I should never have listened to you back then, he said slowly, when you asked me to give her the CEO position. His words hit like thunder. Emily's body jolted. Her eyes widened in disbelief. Chairman, what do you mean by that? But the chairman didn't answer her. Instead, his secretary stepped forward, voice steady and clear. Ryan's mother once saved the chairman's life. He has never forgotten that debt. Later, by chance, both you and Ryan applied to this company. At the time, the chairman's intention was to promote Ryan as president of the branch. The secretary paused, glancing at me with quiet admiration. But Ryan refused. Not only that, he gave his credit, his achievements, everything he had built to you. It was his choice that allowed you to sit in the CEO's chair. Emily's knees nearly buckled. The revelation left her hollow, her eyes wide with disbelief. She turned to me, her voice breaking. Why didn't you ever tell me? Her words hung heavy in the room, the past crashing down like a tide. The moment Mr. Lee's words cut through the air, Emily's smile froze. Her face darkened, but with the chairman sitting right there, she forced her lips into something that looked like composure. Chairman, she said carefully, Edward has been with me for more than half a year. I know his ability. I know his character. Miss Lee must have heard some baseless rumors. Surely, he's misunderstood him. Even as she spoke, her eyes flickered toward me, sharp, accusing. Everyone in the room knew I had close ties with several of the company's biggest clients. And in Emily's mind, the only person who could sabotage Edward's reputation was me. But Mr. Lee didn't even acknowledge her excuse. He simply turned to the chairman. Since Ryan is no longer with your company, he said coldly, our cooperation ends here. The silence that followed hit like a storm. Before the chairman could respond, Emily panicked. Mr. Lee, what do you mean? Even if Ryan has left, Edward is still here. He can... But she didn't know what Mr. Lee already knew. Edward had long offended his younger brother, a supplier, and his arrogance had been no secret. Sure enough, Mr. Lee sneered. Edward? What's he even worth? He doesn't deserve to sit at the same table as me. His gaze shifted to Emily, colder still. And you? You're not just out of touch. You've grown arrogant. Do you even take us seriously? The label landed like a brand. Emily's face went ashen. Edward's eyes flashed with fury. Cornered, he lashed out. Mr. Lee, you must be in on this with Ryan. The chairman's eyes narrowed on Edward, and that sliver of attention gave him courage. Chairman, he insisted, Ryan's still bitter about being fired yesterday. He fabricated that surveillance footage, bribed Mr. Lee, and staged this little show to destroy Emily and me. Otherwise, how could he just happen to show up here, video in hand? I almost laughed. His audacity was something to behold. A failed playwright's talent, wasted in the boardroom. But to my surprise, Emily believed him. Her eyes darted between me and Mr. Lee, suspicion sharp as knives. Finally, she snapped, Ryan, I thought you were just jealous. I thought it was a tantrum. But this, I didn't think you'd stoop to such vile tricks. The room froze. Stunned faces turned toward her. The chairman's expression soured, the word shameful practically written across it. Finally, he broke the silence. His voice was heavy with authority. Enough. The president of a company, acting like a shrew in public. What is this behavior? Emily flushed crimson, her mouth opening to defend herself. But the chairman didn't let her. When we opened this branch, I personally had Ryan install monitoring software on every computer. He said evenly, Are you suggesting I fabricated this video? Emily and Edward were struck dumb. No one in the room had expected that truth. The chairman's voice cut deeper. And as for why Ryan is here today, it's because I asked him to come, to confront you both face to face. Emily, you've disappointed me greatly. Sweat gathered at Emily's brow. Her eyes darted between the chairman and me. Disbelief etched across her face. How could I, an orphan with no family, no backing, hold such weight in front of the chairman? Why had he trusted me with this? Edward, humiliated, snapped again. You set me up together. Mr. Lee gave a cold laugh. If you hadn't dirtied your own hands, how can anyone set you up? Stop blaming others and start thinking about facing the law. Edward was about to spit another curse when he caught sight of the secretary lifting his phone. And then it came, the wail of police sirens in the distance, growing louder by the second. Edward's face drained of all color. His voice trembled. You just wait for me. But before he could finish, panic overtook him. He turned and bolted, disappearing through the door in a desperate run. The chairman raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. The secretary signaled the staff, sending them after him. Emily stood frozen, her legs heavy as stone. She knew that once the truth came out, neither she nor Edward would escape unscathed. But she hadn't expected this. Edward abandoning her, leaving her to face the collapse alone. Mr. Lee seized a moment, his voice sharp as he laid Edward's sins bare. Every scheme, every betrayal over the past 6 months, even the way he'd once harmed Mr. Lee's own brother, was laid out with evidence. Finally, Mr. Lee's sneer cut the air. "Emily, do you still think your assistant is a talent?" Her face was pale as paper. She shook her head, her lips quivering. No, that's impossible. Edward isn't like that." The chairman sighed, his gaze heavy with regret as he turned to me. "I never should have listened to you back then, never should have handed her the CEO position." His words hit like thunder. Emily staggered, eyes wide with shock. "Chairman, what do you mean?" But the chairman didn't answer her. Instead, his secretary stepped forward, voice calm but firm. "Ryan's mother once saved the chairman's life. He has never forgotten that debt. Later, by chance, both you and Ryan applied to this company. At that time, the chairman intended to promote Ryan as president of the branch." The secretary's eyes flicked toward me before continuing. "But Ryan refused. Not only that, he gave all of his achievements to you, allowing you to sit in the CEO's chair." Emily's knees weakened. Her disbelief painted across her face as she turned to me. Why didn't you ever tell me?" Back then, she'd been broken down by the former CEO, crushed under endless pressure. To help her recover, I had struck a private deal with the chairman. As long as Emily could take the CEO role, I would stay quietly in the background and carry the branch to its peak. That fragile arrangement, just like our marriage, collapsed after 7 years. I brushed it off with a calm smile. It's all in the past. No need to bring it up anymore. The secretary took the hint and wisely fell silent. But the chairman's patience was gone. His stare cut straight through Emily, his anger swelling with every word. "A thriving company, ruined in your hands. You allowed factions to form. You let slander poison the workplace. And worst of all, you dare to fire someone who was once our benefactor. You should be the one fired." His voice was final. He didn't wait for protests. With a wave, he ordered the secretary to clear my name, post the announcement, and strip Emily of her title. HR would handle the rest: termination, compensation, and legal responsibility. Emily had never been cornered like this. She broke instantly, trembling as she begged for mercy. "Chairman, please, I'll never make this mistake again." But her pleas fell on deaf ears. Desperate, she turned to me, clutching at straws. "Ryan, please, just plead with him. If you help me keep this job, I'll go public with our relationship. I'll cut ties with Edward forever." I pulled my hand back. My voice was steady. "Emily, you've forgotten. I don't want your promises anymore. I only want a divorce, to be free of you completely." Her head shook violently, eyes wild with disbelief. "No, impossible. You love me too much. Back then, when I gave Edward everything, you endured it. And now, I promised to give him up. How could you still leave me?" I almost laughed. To her, betrayal had been kindness. Even Mr. Lee couldn't stand it. He stepped in, his words sharp. "Miss Moo. Oh, excuse me, Ms. Moo. You've forgotten something. Edward won't be free to see you anymore. Prison doesn't allow visits that often." Emily's lip trembled, but before she could argue, the chairman lost patience. He waved his hand, and security dragged her out. Her cries echoed down the hall until silence finally settled over the room. For the first time, I could breathe. Before leaving, the chairman turned back to me. "Ryan, why don't you take over as CEO?" I shook my head. "Sorry, Chairman. That company already lost my trust. I've moved on. I've already accepted another offer." The chairman studied me, then nodded with my ability. He knew I'd land on my feet anywhere, but his anger at losing me smoldered, and in the end, he directed it all at the branch. By morning, he announced its closure. The days that followed, I buried myself in my new life, settling into a fresh home, leading my new company. To keep Emily's shadow from haunting me, I blocked every account she could reach me from. News trickled back in fragments. When the branch dissolved, employees were left dazed, unsure of what had really happened. Only later did they learn the truth, that Emily and Edward had been the architects of their downfall. Rage followed. Calls, texts, relentless messages flooded them both. Emily cracked first. The pressure broke her mind. Once, she nearly stumbled into traffic. Lawsuits followed. The parent company pressed charges, but since she hadn't directly handled the core financial crimes, she avoided prison. Still, she lost everything. To repay damages, she sold off every asset. Her name in the industry turned to poison. No company dared touch her. Edward? He vanished. No trace, no closure. Whether that was relief or regret, I couldn't tell. At least the prenup Emily once demanded worked in my favor. Her debts never reached me. Free at last, I hired a lawyer and filed for divorce. I believed it was done. Clean cut. No ties. But fate wasn't finished. One morning, as I stepped into my new office, I saw her. Emily, waiting at the entrance, unrecognizable. Bent, worn, a shadow of the woman I once knew. 10 years older in a matter of months. Her eyes brimmed with desperation as she rushed to me. "Ryan, please, just this once. I know you still have the chairman's ear. If you could ask him to lift the blacklist, I'll do anything you ask." Only then did I realize the chairman had banned them both from the entire industry. I shook my head. My voice was quiet, but final. "Emily, we're adults. Actions have consequences. I gave you everything, but you never saw it. Now I can't save you." I turned to leave, but she wouldn't let go. Her voice rose, frantic, trembling. "If you don't help me, I won't leave. I'll stay here until you say yes." And then she collapsed, right there on the pavement. Her cries filled the street. Oh, God! What sin have I committed? To end up with such a heartless man, who threw me out for another woman, and now won't even come home? I stood frozen, watching the woman who once prided herself on poise and elegance reduce the theatrics on the ground. It was rush hour. A crowd gathered fast. And in that crowd were my new colleagues, staring at the scene unraveling before them. To stop things from spiraling any further, I grabbed Emily by the arm and pulled her outside. By the time we reached the quiet cafe, she had already collected herself. Calm, composed. She lifted her cup, took a slow sip of coffee, and looked straight at me. "Ryan," she began, her voice measured but laced with warning. "You saw it yourself. As long as you convince the chairman to lift my blacklist, I'll treat you well from now on. But if you refuse, I'll stand right outside your office and tell the world every dirty little secret you've tried to hide." Her audacity was staggering. This was the same woman who had chosen Edward over our marriage, the same woman who had walked out on our home. And yet here she was, brazenly accusing me, as if I were the one who had broken us. For years, even when she ignored my feelings and paraded Edward in front of me, I still held on some part of the woman I once loved. But in that moment, watching her smirk across the table, I had never felt more distant from her. She must have seen it in my eyes, because her lips curled into a cold, knowing smile. "You probably despise me for the way I've acted, don't you?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She pressed on anyway. "Do you even know what my life has been like?" Her voice cracked slightly. "To pay back the compensation, I've sold everything I own. I thought I'd bounce back, thought I could rebuild. But the chairman, he's cut me off completely. No one dares help me. No one even dares speak to me. He won't even give me the chance at the most basic job." Her eyes dropped, her voice barely a whisper now. "These days, I'd take anything, even sweeping the streets." Her words should have stirred something inside me, pity, anger, maybe even sympathy. But I felt nothing. Maybe that was the truth I'd been avoiding. I didn't love her anymore. And yet, to keep her from interfering with my work, I agreed to help her this one last time. The instant she sensed my resolve softening, her face lit up with hope. "I knew you'd come through, Ryan. Don't worry. Once I find another job, I'll treat you well. We'll even have a grand wedding, invite all our friends and family. The delusion in her words made my chest tighten. I frowned, cutting her off. Emily were already separated. But she waved my words away like they were nothing. Separated, yes, but not divorced. We've been together for 10 years. There's still hope for us. Because she had refused to sign the divorce papers. It was true. The process wasn't finalized. But I was done arguing. Instead, I reached into my bag, pulled out the petition for divorce, and laid it on the table along with the videos and messages Edward had sent me. Emily, I said, my voice flat, this is the evidence of your betrayal. With the chairman and others willing to testify, there's nothing left between us. Divorce is inevitable. You need to face reality. I stood to leave, but she wasn't finished. She rushed after me, clinging to my arm. Ryan, there's nothing between me and Edward. I only got close to him because he reminded me of the man you used to be. I couldn't stop myself, a bitter smile tugged at my lips. So, if I met a woman who reminded me of you, would it be acceptable for me to fall for her too? Of course not, she snapped without hesitation. I looked at her quietly, the weight of her hypocrisy heavy between us. You can't accept it, but you've expected me to swallow it all this time. Emily, let's end this with dignity. This is where it stops. She opened her mouth to protest, but then her face froze. In the next instant, she shoved me hard. I staggered back just in time to see it. A glint of silver, then the knife plunging into Emily's abdomen. I turned, and there he was, Edward. His breath reeked of alcohol, his eyes bloodshot with rage. Ryan, he roared, his voice trembling with hatred. This is all your fault. You ruined me. I'll kill you. I'll make you pay. He ripped the knife out and lunged toward me again. But before the blade could find its mark, neighbors rushed in, tackling him to the ground. Some dragged him back. Others rushed to Emily, shouting for an ambulance. By the end of the night, Edward was in handcuffs. Emily was in surgery. When I visited her later in the hospital, she looked fragile, pale against the white sheets, staring blankly at the leaves outside her window. The moment she saw me, her lips curved into a faint smile. For a second, under the sunlight, I thought I saw the Emily I once knew, the girl who had just stepped into the world, still full of innocence. But reality snapped me back. She patted the side of the bed. Sit down. I shook my head. I've already paid your medical bills. I even spoke with the chairman. Once you're discharged, you'll be able to return to a normal life. She barely seemed to hear me. Her gaze didn't waver. Ryan, I lost myself for a while. But after everything I know now, I've always loved you. Even if you won't help me, even if nothing changes, I still want to start over with you. I slid the divorce papers onto her lap, my voice steady. Emily, there's no going back. Out of respect for the 10 years we shared, I don't want this dragged through court. Please, let's end this cleanly. She stared down at the papers. Slowly, her hands began to tremble. Then the tears came, silent, unstoppable. At last, with a shaking pen, she signed her name. In that moment, I knew whatever tied us together was finally, irrevocably severed. And for the first time in a long time, I felt the weight lift. A new life was waiting for me.